Hello, everyone, and this is Justin Strange from the Fantastic Mr. Podcast. I just wanted to jump on real quick and remind everybody that Zack, Jake, and I are all three in different states right now, so we can't physically meet to do this podcast. So during the podcast, you might experience some breaking up, stuff like that. So please bear with us. We want to make this podcast. We want to do it for you. Just unfortunately, this is the only way we can do it right now. So please bear with us. If there are any internet issues you can hear, we'll push through it and hope for the best as we continue. Thank you so much for listening. Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Fantastic Mr. Podcast. I am Justin Strange, and I am joined here with my lovely co-hosts, Jake Kramers and Zack Briggs. Say hello, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Yo, what's up?
Zack's every time. Yo, that's all he says. You know, I think that they would be happy if you just said yo and then said nothing else the whole time. What do you think? I don't know. I'm just making a joke, okay?
Yo,
can we?
I guess the redundancy, perhaps.
No, just be funny if all you said was yo and didn't say a word the whole time.
Well, when I play video games with people, I often greet people with yo.
Well, you also don't really say much when you play video games with people, because I play video games with you.
I don't know the people that you play with.
That's true. That's fair. You know what? I'll give you that. All right, so today we're going to do, every 10th episode, we're going to do a thing called Movies by the Decade, where we focus on a specific decade until we get to, I guess, 2010s. When we get to 20, when we get to 2020, we can talk about the first couple years, but...
Have we done 10 episodes already?
Yeah, we have.
Wow.
We wouldn't be talking about this if we hadn't done 10 episodes, I would think. I'm just guessing though.
I'm flabbergasted. It doesn't feel like 10 episodes. It feels like it's been much faster than that.
That's what she said. Is that a good one?
Nope.
No.
Okay.
I'll get
it.
The
listeners are already heavily cringing about
I'm okay with
just lost
to another
like 30% of our listener base.
Started out to a great start here.
I'll make sure.
I love these guys. Nope.
Nope. I'll make sure the next one's really good. Okay. So basically what we're going to do is every 10th episode focus on a specific decade. And this first one, we're going to talk about the 1930s, because that's kind of when movies, they weren't invented in the 1930s. They're kind of where they kind of took off, where they started becoming more feature-length films, and, color was... sound had become a thing now because, the 1929, the jazz singer helped propel sound into the mainstream. Then, the 30s hit and helped propel the sound in film. And then we eventually got color in the 30s with The Wizard of Oz, like full color, not like color on the film, and, make it look like it's in color, but it's really not. So we're just I think we've all kind of picked some things to talk about as far as the 30s. Zack and I have picked a couple movies that we want to talk about, and I think Jake wants to talk about something that has nothing to do with movies, like
nothing
always.
To do with film at all.
So actually, Jake, why don't we start with you then? Why don't we get your take on the whole 1930s thing real quick, if you don't mind, or do you want us to start?
No, when you say I have something planned, I really don't. It's just vague ideas floating in the ether.
Well, why don't you give us those vague ideas and see if we can take something and run with it?
Yeah, that's how we're gonna have to do this.
Yeah, sounds great.
So when it comes to films, the 1930s, I am not familiar with. I'll tell you that right off the bat. Okay. I'm not someone who particularly enjoys going back and watching older films.
Lame. Go ahead.
I know I'm not. I'm not an artiste, not a film.
But you're the one who want to talk about art history.
So my main connection to all of this, because I didn't take any film history courses. I don't really watch vintage films besides the odd film that I watched with my parents, essentially. Because my dad's 72.
Really?
So yeah.
Wow.
They had me late. So
we both have old parents.
All the older films, and that doesn't go back to the 1930s, but all the older films I have watched are majorly introduced from my parents. So my connection to this whole 1930s thing is art history, because art history courses I did take. I have a minor in fine art. I took 2 art history courses and 1 art history course specifically in illustration. So that's my connection to this whole deal. It's not so much the film aspect of it, but the art that is kind of surrounding that time. Are you guys kind of familiar with the art that was going on in the 1930s?
Not really. I want you to actually. I'm really interested to find out. To be honest with you,
Gotcha.
I'm not being sarcastic. I promise.
Gotcha. The 1930s was kind of this interesting time because you had this major world war, if you guys are familiar with it,
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that people were coming out of. And
Sure.
that really heavily influenced a lot of the art that was being done, particularly in Germany, which then bled into a lot of the other art scenes. Particularly, I'm talking about the 1930s, like German, like Impressionism. Is the German Expressionism movement? I was getting my words mixed up a little bit.
Mixer.
Basically, in the early 20th century, artists decided to emphasize like their feelings over the like replicating reality. So it wasn't so much of like being truthful to reality as a vision, but more of the inner thoughts and feelings that they were going through, because obviously they went through a whole heck of a lot, and that was expressed in a lot of their art. If you notice how it's connected to films, a lot of the stage sets, if you ever go back and you watch the sets that are made, they all have kind of like these like blocky squares and repeating patterns and things like that. That's all kind of from the German Expressionism. So in the film sets, because a lot of times, essentially in the 1930s, maybe you guys disagree with me, but I feel like a lot of the 1930s films weren't really films. They were just filmed plays to me, essentially. It was just because you had all these really famous singers and dancers who did silent films and things like that. And now they have this new art piece. They don't really know what to do with it. And so they essentially just kept doing what they were doing, except they did it in front of a camera instead of a live audience. So I don't know. The movies themselves don't seem that particularly interesting to me. There are a couple of exceptions, which I'm sure you guys will get into. But yeah, so I'm more connected to like the art side of the things.
When I hear that, I think of like the early silent films. So like specifically with George Méliès, he made a lot of silent films because he originally wasn't a filmmaker. He did other stuff, and then he saw his first camera. I think it was at a World Fair. And he thought it was just awesome. So he ended up, I think if I remember correctly, and I'm so sorry if I'm wrong here. I know I teach this stuff, but that doesn't mean I remember everything. I think he built his own camera. He took, he had a camera, and a lot of the older cameras, especially the very first cameras, they were able to project as well as record. So I think he built his own camera, and his sets were awesome. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen Trip to the Moon. It's about 15 minutes long. It's a silent film. It's one of the biggest like special effects, feats was a bullet being shot into the moon's eye. It was really cool. But that's what I think of when I hear like art and stuff, because like his sets were pretty beautiful, even with, and this was before the 30s, and I know we're supposed to be talking about the 30s, but that's all they had back then with those silent films. You have people dressed up in like lavish type suits and dancing around, and they have to kind of overact because you can't hear them. They have to use their body a lot because it's silent. So they're like, okay, well, how are we going to make this funny? All right, well, we got to move our bodies. And so that's kind of what I think of with the art. And like, I don't know necessarily about German Expressionism. Maybe in Germany, the silent films were like that,
Well,
the early films, at least.
I kind of jumped the gun because the early Expressionism, I got a little mixed up. The German Expressionism was the 1920s.
Right.
And then the war hit, and that's kind of like put a stopper on the Expressionism movement, and then went into the Art Deco. And
that's interesting.
Deco, I'm going to correct myself what I just said earlier. Art Deco are the square, like the hard edges and repeating lines and the kind of blockiness that you would see on all the sets. If you go back and you think of like the stage sets that you would see in these films, if you just picture it, you're probably thinking of like a blank stage with like a random set of stairs that goes to nowhere.
Yeah.
And like some like random curtains, some monolithic statues on the side. That's Art Deco. essentially. And that was heavily inspired. That heavily inspired a lot of the sets and material that they used at the time, which I think worked with the 1930s because the artists weren't trying to create these intense films. We won't get that until Citizen Kane.
Mm-hmm.
It was focused on the singers and the songwriters and the dancers. And it was a really kind of minimalistic, simplistic backdrop to the movement, to the art that these people were doing.
Well, when you say like singers and dancers and stuff, it makes me think more of 1920s film where it's like silent most. But in the 30s we had musicals and stuff. So I get what you're saying. Like
I keep going to like whenever I think about it, and this is obviously past the 1930s, but like what is that movie? It's like White Christmas. Do you guys remember that? With that film, that's kind of like when I think of singing and song dancing. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I think of because they're essentially the movie was made later, but it was kind of set in the time or inspired from that time because it was these people who did that artwork when they were younger. And this is kind of them older, and they're hearkening back to the stuff that they did. So that's what I think of. All the sets in that film are inspired by the kind of sets that they would have had in the 1930s because they were performers and entertainers that are essentially they're kind of on the edge of their careers and they're hearkening back. I don't know. That maybe we call all this out and that none of that matters. But all I'm saying is whenever I think of 1930s films, I think of just that flat, simple, blocky stage, which is primarily Art Deco.
Would you call it conservative? Would you characterize it as conservative decoration? Because I think that fits with the time of the 20s to the early 50s when style in general was pretty uniform with the suits, the dresses, the prim and proper facade of society that's portrayed on TV or on film. Not everyone had that weird mid transatlantic accent, which is a mix of English and American English accents. Like you hear some of these actors during interviews, they don't really speak like they do on set and on film.
So, Jake, got anything more to say about?
No, I mean I'm interested to hear about you guys. I'm interested to hear your perspectives on it because, like I said, 1930s is not really my bag. But I know, Zach, you love the music from that time. Justin, you have done, or you have been through, film
the
history
30s,
and things like that. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. Primarily, I'm here to learn.
Okay,
this is a learning experience for me.
Zach, you wanna start with?
I might want to start off with something somewhat controversial. African Americans, Black people, in the early days, up and probably till the 70s, I'd say, were limited to the type of roles that they could have on film. Limited to the butler, the Mamie type
Uncle
positions. Uncle Tom. Yeah, very unfortunate. Coming across as this goofball essentially, and with racial undertones. Louis Armstrong. He agreed to play himself in a multitude of films in the 30s, 40s, etc. But it's something that he, in interviews, expressed that he really didn't agree with, but he felt like he was representing positively a certain demographic as well, and some people received it well from the African American community, but others thought he was doing a disservice by the way he was asked to act on screen. Like he would be portrayed as some trumpet player in a jungle, and we could don't need to dive too deep into what that's trying to insinuate. But lots of situations like in the movie White Christmas, or a similar movie called Holiday Inn, which is in the 40s, 1942 Holiday Inn. There's this one role of this prominent actress. I forgot her name, but she plays this. She does it pretty well, but she's like a maid, and she's probably one of the highlight roles, and quite funny. But I feel like back then, it's just unfortunate that African Americans or minorities in general weren't afforded lead roles, and sometimes the lines that they had weren't much at all. They had those, as I said, the prejudice undertones. I don't know if you've seen that. There's also been instances of blackface, including in 1942's The Holiday Inn with Bing Crosby.
Right. Yeah, blackface was a big thing, especially with like the vaudeville and all that, with like this, the older sketch type shows. I took a African American history class. It was really, really interesting. Back then, it was like you said, like the butler, the Uncle Tom, the maid, all this stuff. It's just like that's what they played. It's kind of sucked. But then eventually, oh God, I forget his name now, but he was a really good actor, really good singer, really good dancer, black actor. And he had a few lead roles. And then, you got Sidney Poitier, who came around later. And then you wanted to talk about do you want to talk about some monster movies there, Zach?
Yeah, Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, etc. I grew up going to Hollywood Video, renting those. The covers came across as pretty cool. And I remember watching Frankenstein for the first time as Boris Karloff, I believe, who portrays Frankenstein's monster. And he proceeded to play him in a number of other iterations of Frankenstein. Kind of uncomfortable, as a kid, watching certain scenes, just very creepy. His portrayal of the monster, including one scene. I think he drowns essentially a little girl. In the pond. That was one of the most disturbing scenes I'd seen in any movie. Maybe initially I thought because it was black and white as a kid, maybe I wouldn't be as turned off or frightened. But it kind of had, I know, kind of an odd comparison, but I guess back then, I was taught about no stranger danger from my parents, and no pedophiles and et cetera. Right. But I felt not. Obviously, there was no pedophilia in the Frankenstein movie, but I had kind of weird, vibes. Like maybe that it comes across as a creep. So that was. I enjoyed the movie. I had also another reaction when the villagers are basically picketing and have their pitchforks, and they ultimately kill the monster, and you could hear the screams of Boris's Frankenstein's monster as he's being burned alive in was it a windmill or a church, some type of structure? But I think that's how the movie ends as well. But the Frankenstein movie, that I think that's what popularized one of the quotes of he's alive, he's alive. Mm-hmm. That's pretty memorable in filmology quotes. I think Dracula, in similar ways, had demonstrated how, for the first time, scary movies or horror flicks can, evoke these, various type of reactions. Because in the silent film days, what do we have, like Mr. Ferratu? What was that guy's name?
Yes,
Nosferatu.
Yeah, wasn't that during the silent film age? I feel it was.
I believe that was. It was like the late 20s. That was like 28, 29. Like it was right before the 1930s.
That movie had comedic aspects, I felt like, as well. But in general, the horror flicks of the 1930s are kind of what introduced me to getting more interested about what else there is in store for that era. And I also love the symphonic music. I'm a big instrumental music guy. And how the movies start out with credits and a list of all the actors, directors, and then it eventually gets into the film. Like some people might kind of be turned off by that if they've been used to watching more modern movies, but I enjoyed kind of be able to digest everything before it gets into the meat of the film.
Yeah, I agree with that. The whole title cards and the credits at the beginning, because it's kind of neat. You get to hear the music, you get to see who's in it, who directed it and stuff. Whereas, nowadays you're having to watch something going on in the movie while these credits are going on, and it's kind of like
no one pays attention to them for the most part.
And they that's probably the conclusion they came to, where they're like, we don't need to do all this at the beginning. Let's just have the credits roll over the movie. And as
a result, sorry to interrupt.
It's okay.
At the end of a lot of these older films, you don't see any credits. Mm-hmm. It's just the end. And
it's that you're done.
Yeah, you're done. You move on. Go home.
A nice sense of finality.
And it's so funny teaching high school, because they don't understand that. So when we watch an older movie and you got all these credits on, they're like, "Why is this taking so long?" I'm like, "That's how movies were back then. Like they didn't do like they do now, where the credits are really at the end and you kind of see the opening credits while watching the movie. It's like this is what they did. It's like they they played music and you saw who was in it at the same time as, the music's playing. And just, you did this first. This was the first thing you did in a movie.
He does a great job setting the tone for the film.
I mean, I agree. I totally agree. And like the music is setting the tone. Totally agree with that.
And with the music as well, I feel like they go through excerpts of multiple musical motifs that you'll eventually hear.
It's like a play. I mean, it's like a play, like you were saying, Jake, it's kind of like, everything. It's like a play on film. And so they're like, hey, here's all the music that you should probably listen to so that when these characters come up, you'll understand why.
What are your thoughts on like the cinematography of, I guess, most films of that era and probably eras after that, with the limited instances of tight shots? It just feels like a lot of the cam works like as Jake was saying, kind of a play audience stage theater perspective where you're seeing a lot on screen at once.
For me, like, I mean, I enjoy it. It kind of
lack of intimacy, I feel like.
Yeah, you're right. Because, close-ups were invented so that we can see the emotion on somebody's face. And so there really wasn't. I mean, there are a little bit, like Casablanca has a little bit of it, it kind of as the years went by, but yeah, you're right. The first movie that's coming to mind is The Wizard of Oz, where there really wasn't a lot of close-ups. There was mostly, maybe a medium close-up at the or a medium long shot at the most, where it's from the waist up or the knees up, and or at the least the most. Anyway, not a lot of real close-ups, so you don't get to see that emotion in a character's face. But then again, you think The Wizard of Oz. I mean, yeah, it's kind of emotional, but it's not really. Have you all seen The Wizard of Oz? I've assume you have. And
yes.
if you have, how long has it been since you've seen it?
It's probably been a couple years for me. There was a time when I was a teenager that we watched it fairly often.
Yeah. And so I mean, only reason I can bring it up now, I watched it with my students not too long ago because it was part of the curriculum. And,
I didn't realize till just now that it was a 1930s film.
It's 1939, so it's like right at the end, tail end of the 30s, and so that was kind of when color was introduced, right? Full color in film, because if you notice, and the cool thing about that film is like it uses Kansas as the black and white, and then uses color for Oz, which makes a lot more sense, right? Because you have this fantastical place and they're like, oh man, what we can do? Kansas can be boring black and white where, because Dorothy wants to leave. She wants to go somewhere over the rainbow, and that's what Oz is for. So, why, if we're going to do somewhere over the rainbow, we need to make it in color, and it needs to be bright colors, so greens and yellows mostly.
We know the technique. Who invented the technique of color film? I mean, was there a certain company back then? Color Technica
it was Technicolor. That was Technicolor. The first.
Yeah.
They were the first ones to really patent the color process.
Yeah,
for film.
Yeah, and it looked really good, for the time, especially. Even now, it still looks really good. Like I said, I watched it with a bunch of high schoolers, and I was like, man, this movie still is really good looking. Like, you had the Yellow Brick Road, which is straight up yellow, like you can't mistake the color. And then Oz, which is Emerald City, which
imagine them singing that song with the film being black and white.
I mean, we just have to trust that the freaking road is yellow, It's like, and then Emerald City, we're like, okay, well, I guess it's emerald,
It makes you wonder if movies back then, especially during more of the black and white films, if they avoided dialogue or any reference to color. Objects and color. It makes me wonder and want to go back to kind of analyze that. It makes probably they did avoid trying to specify the color of things. Thinking of like the whole referring to color in black and white. Actually, something a little more modern, American Horror Story. I think season 10, where they had it was called the double feature or whatever. So the first half was a story about these essentially like zombies that were in this town, but the second half was in black and white and color. So kind of like the Wizard of Oz. So when it was in the old days with who was the president that I can't remember the freaking president's name, but Eisenhower. Dwight D. Eisenhower. It was Eisenhower. Anyway, it had to do with aliens and stuff. So that part was in black and white, but then
it had present day, which was in color. But there was a point where Eisenhower's wife went to like this place where humans lived to essentially serve the aliens, and it was in black and white. And when she walked in, another character was like, "Oh, it's about time someone brought some color in here," but it was in black and white, and everybody was apparently wearing white except for her. She was wearing pink. And so, but it was kind of neat because she was like, "It's about time someone brought some color in here," but you don't know really what color she's wearing until you see her in color later, because it jumps to the future where they're still alive. They're still the same age. It was kind of neat. That's really the only time I've heard anybody in black and white refer to something, a different color inside their world,
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty neat.
Or what's the movie with Tobey Maguire?
Spider-Man,
Wonder Boys.
What's it called?
Seabiscuit.
Wonder Boy.
Pleasantville.
Oh yeah, that was a good movie.
Pleasantville.
I forgot about that movie. That was Tobey Maguire and
black and white. That's another black and white film where color is
introduced into that world.
Gradually introduced to the film. Also, some amazing special effects in that film.
Good pick, man. That's good. Good job. That's what Reese Witherspoon and Tobey Maguire. Have you seen that movie, Zach?
Yeah. I don't think so.
It's a movie about, what is it about? There's
it's essentially these siblings. Who's the brother of the two is Tobey Maguire, and he's obsessed with this black and white TV show. Tobey Maguire's character is obsessed with this black and white TV show, and they're visited by a mysterious TV repairman, and essentially gets sucked into the show. And because Toby is so familiar with that TV show, because they take on the roles of two characters, and they have to play their characters. So he's doing great, and his sister's having a hard time because she doesn't watch the show. And essentially, as the show progresses, they get love interests, and they start, causing trouble, and essentially they start feeding emotion into the townsfolk. And as the townsfolk start feeling emotion, then color is introduced into their lives. And it's all really a really kind of blatant play on the aspect of racism and otherness.
Yeah.
But it's a really great film. And that was something, speaking of the color being introduced to black and white,
right?
That was a film that
nice job, man. That's a good pick. I haven't seen that movie ever. So the next movie I wanted to talk about from the 30s specifically is a movie I freaking loved. It's King Kong, the original King Kong. Have y'all seen it?
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay, so it's in black and white. So it's a movie about this director who wants to film. I can't remember exactly what he wants to film. I think it's some sort of tribe or film on this remote island. I think it was. He just wanted to shoot a movie on this remote island, and he needs a female lead, so he finds this random girl. Kind of, she ends up being his female lead, and they go to this island to shoot. But then they find out that this tribe lives there, and then there's also these giant monsters. So if you guys have seen any recent Godzilla / King Kong movies, you know that Godzilla's from.
What do you mean?
Where he lives?
Trivia, Zack.
Monster Island.
Lightning Round.
Skull Island.
Well, Monster Island and the Toho films. I don't count the American legendary films.
Well, that's where
Origins.
he's from. Well, that's where he's from. Well, King Kong is American. King Kong isn't Toho.
I know that, but you asked me where Godzilla is from, and I always refer.
Oh no, I asked where King Kong was from. Sorry, I asked where King Kong was from. That's what I meant.
In that case,
Skull Island.
In the King Kong versus Godzilla in 1962, it's a different island.
Oh, is it really? Okay, I need to watch that.
You dare question my intelligence?
Yeah, that movie I haven't seen in a very long time either. I do remember watching it as a kid because I believe it's called
Pharaoh. I believe it's called Pharaoh Island.
Okay, well, in the original movie, they go to Skull Island. That's where they find out that these giant monsters live there, and one of them is King Kong. And
Era Island, my bad.
Get this man on a quiz show.
I trusted you, Zach. I trusted you. So they go to this island. If they see King Kong, and they end up taking him back, and he's essentially like a sideshow act, and he escapes, and the infamous climbing on skyscrapers, and spoiler alert, he dies.
I'm just now realizing that Mighty Joe Young is a Disney-fied version of King Kong, isn't he? Did you guys watch Mighty Joe Young?
No, I never saw it. I know
I've seen clips.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
It's essentially it's essentially King Kong
Disney version.
It's like a children's movie.
King Kong isn't a bad movie for children either.
There's a couple different versions too. There's a 1949 and then the 98 version
of Mighty Joe Young.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So anyway, back to King Kong. Oh, cool. Well, anyway,
Mighty Joe Young's the kid version.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I know. I know Mighty Joe Young, which I just realized because I'm an idiot that's just like a Disney-fied version of
King Kong. Well, now I gotta watch it.
But would you say King Kong, the 30s one, is a tragedy?
Depends on who you think the hero is, right?
Well, obviously King Kong.
Beauty killed the beast.
King of the Kongs.
But he like loves her, and she, I think, not necessarily has romantic feelings for him, but she feels for him as well because. So I mean, I guess, yeah, you can consider it a tragedy because he does die at the end.
Are you telling this movie is a noir with a monkey?
No.
Okay.
Not that deep.
Yeah, no.
That would be a great film, though.
Talk about how revolutionary seeing the
Thank you
animation of that time.
I'm trying so hard to derail us.
I mean, seriously. So here's the cool thing about King Kong that I really, really loved. Like, it's a great movie. The plot is great. The acting isn't bad. It's back then acting wasn't it was like overacting almost, like really dramatic. If it was something was dramatic, then yeah. If it was something was really dramatic, it was you knew it was dramatic. But
you knew it was dramatic because the music helps and it swells or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't as like subtle as it is nowadays. It was like you knew the music was there. So back then, though, to get a giant monkey on screen, things had to be done, So if you notice, and here's what I think it was, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure, like, if you saw the real actress, of King Kong standing in front of King Kong, it was probably some sort of projection that she was looking at, is what I'm guessing. Does that make sense? Some sort of like film version of the movie, like of King Kong up in front of. But if you saw, like, if you ever watch this movie and he's holding her, it's clearly like a doll version. And it was a lot of stop motion animation involved in this movie, but for me, it didn't detract me from the movie. It didn't take me out of it being like, oh man, that's stop motion. Like, this is stupid. Stop motion and live action together. It wasn't really, this is the only way that they're going to get, animation and live action together is to stop motion. Cause animation was kind of new back then. And so that's kind of the great thing about that movie. It was like, they did it and they did it really, really well. So if you haven't seen King Kong, go back and watch it and watch how revolutionary that animation with the live action is. It like, yeah, you can tell it's fake. It's a freaking giant monkey, but it's like, but they did it really well, especially for 1933, when film was like kind of sophisticated. They did the best with what they had.
And there were some iconic scenes, the fight scene with Kong and the dinosaur that he jams a tree branch down the throat, and maybe I think it even opens the jaw.
He pulls open the jaw, and oh my God, that was.
And that scene was ever since, like, that move was replicated in other Kong iterations.
It makes me think of God. What is the first Star Wars movie? Remind me.
A New Hope.
Thank you. I don't know why I forgot that. I'm so sorry. Yeah, A New Hope. When Obi.
And there goes
all my credibility. There goes all my credibility.
We lost 30% of the beginning.
I can't believe I did that
right now.
Well, it was in my head and then I forgot it. I got nervous, guys.
Or you could just say Star Wars.
And let me go ahead and tell you, my dog is freaking out and he's getting on my nerves. I think he wants out. So I'm also having to, because he keeps jumping on me and I'm having to push him off. So it's making me forget things. So in A New Hope, when Obi-Wan disappears and Darth Vader steps on his cloak or whatever to make sure he's really not there, Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So in King Kong, that's kind of what he does when he opens up that dinosaur's mouth and kills him. He kind of hits it to make sure the dinosaur is dead. And it's really funny to watch. It was kind of cool back then, because with older movies, especially, you didn't need logic for plot points at all. You could just do something like Space Jam. You got Michael Jordan hanging out with the Looney Tunes and there's no rhyme or reason. He's just he gets sucked. They need a star for a basketball game. They take Michael Jordan, and it's all good. You know,
I just can't imagine being audience member of Kong in the 30s and seeing that.
Oh, I bet it would have been scary.
That animal. I mean, a lot of people must have been awestruck, and people probably want to see it again the following day.
They were so hype.
I would love.
I want to see reviews if there reviews exist. I want to read some of the earliest reviews of that movie and see what people thought.
I bet you're telling their friends, guys, I saw this movie. It was incredible. There was this monkey in a
giant monkey.
It was incredible.
It looks real. I mean,
this is the best cinema, guys.
Pete. Here's the thing: is movies.
They had real tigers in that movie too.
Movies. People, when movies were first introduced, it wasn't like plot-driven movies. It was just like, hey, let's point a camera at this thing and film it. So, the first movies essentially were like an arrival of a train at the station, feeding the baby, and leaving the factory. You know what those movies were about? An arrival of a train of a station. It was about feeding a baby. Like it was literally just taking it. And they consider them documentaries because it was literally just taking it and showing it. But, an arrival of the train at the station, people thought that this train was going to jump out at them because it was coming from it was like a faraway shot to a close up. And people thought, that's just, and with, like you said, with the monkey, like a giant monkey, people were like, holy, it's like the monkey looked real, it's like you keep progressing in movies and making things look real, somehow people might actually believe it, not necessarily believe that a giant monkey is real, but believe that he, how did the heck did they do this kind of thing, I mean,
there was nothing really to compare.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't imagine any other movie that came before that had that technology.
Yeah, that had a freaking giant monkey in it. So King Kong is a great example of a really good revolutionary 30s movie.
Might be a great place to start too. People that don't know much about the 30s films. I mean, it's an enjoyable movie.
Yeah.
What would you guys suggest? So for the plebeians out there, such as myself, who haven't watched 1930s films, what would you suggest?
Well, I would definitely suggest King Kong. Not necessarily. I mean, yes, it was a great revolutionary film, but it's just a cool film, And
it has name recognition too. A lot of people have heard of the name King Kong.
I would also suggest Wizard of Oz, no doubt, but I would also suggest Gone with the Wind, mainly because only because it was an Oscar-winning movie. So if you want to,
it doesn't matter.
I've yet to see it.
I haven't seen it either.
The most disappointing film I ever watched was Gone with the Wind. Here's my contrarian take, you guys. Since apparently I'm the contrarian.
Yeah, I got it.
Watched Gone with the Wind with my parents when I was like 9 years old. Mm-hmm. This is a long ass movie. It's like 3.5 hours. If it's
crazy.
Not 3.5 hours, it certainly feels like it.
And it doesn't.
Every scene, I was telling myself, it has to get better. This is an Oscar-winning movie. This is a historical film. This is a basis of our filmography. You have to watch this movie. This is an amazing film. And every scene, it kept getting worse. This is the most boring, drawn out, self-obsessed piece of work I've ever had the displeasure of watching. I don't care if it's Oscar winning.
Well,
I don't care if it was. It's an awful movie. Don't watch it. I'm gonna say don't watch it.
All right. Well,
another
if you hate
movie,
Jake, watch the movie. Go ahead.
There's a movie that won a couple Oscars. It's called All Quiet on the Western Front.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes place during World War I. It's English language, but German youth. It's just following the Germans in their actions during World War I. Apparently, it won numerous awards. It was made in 1930. 2 hours and 32 minutes. I haven't seen it, but I like war films, and that seems like something I'd be up my alley.
I don't know. Is there a remake of that movie?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've seen the remake because I'm pretty sure we watched it in high school, and it was a good movie. It was
1979.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we watched the remake because I don't think Wizard of Oz. Yeah, we can show that to high schoolers because that's kind of a landmark movie, But All Quiet on the Western Front, I don't think it would fly.
They can't experience the horrors of war.
No, it's going to be boring for them. That's just how it is. That's how high schoolers are, Like I showed every movie that I've shown them besides Citizen Kane, they've liked it if it's in black and white.
Wait. You said every movie you showed them besides Citizen Kane, they like. if it's in black and white.
Well, when I say that, I mean like I'm like, I'll show them a movie. They're like, it's in black and white, and I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh man, and then they're like, oh, I really like that movie, except for Citizen Kane,
but
which
they don't like Citizen Kane.
Yeah, okay. I know we're not talking about what 40s yet, but Citizen Kane,
it's right there on the cusp.
Yeah, Citizen Kane is a very technically great movie. And when I say technically, I mean the film techniques that Orson Welles used in that movie, like, is insanely awesome. But the movie itself, like even the story, is just is very bland. It's just about a report, the rise and fall of a newspaper man.
I would agree.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, when I was told about Citizen Kane, it was referred to as the best film. What I realized by that was that it's actually the most important film, not necessarily the best.
I would agree.
Stories wise, it's the best because it changed the way that we create cinema.
Yeah.
But the story itself is not necessarily the best.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that for a long time.
Well, I watched it in college and I didn't understand why this movie was great. I was like, this movie was not good. But then I when I taught it and then rewatching it again, I was like, okay, I can see why people love this movie, because he did things that people just didn't do. Like he had deep focus shots where you could see everything behind, and then he just had crazy shots, like shots of people having conversations, but you don't see their freaking faces, you see their feet, and then he just did kind of cool things like with a giant audience, a wide shot of an audience, but it was just a matte drawing with holes poked in them and light shining through it, so it could seem like the audience was moving. I know we're not talking about the 40s, but I could talk about Citizen Kane all day.
My understanding of the 1930s film environment was there was a lot of films that were made. Not a lot of them were great, but the few that were good went down in history. I think I read in a book.
You read a book?
I read a book.
I didn't know you could read. You know what that's from? You know what that's from? You know what that's from? That's a quote from Harry Potter. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. What was it in like the 1930s or something? They averaged like 766.
Well, it's because
a year or something like that.
Movies,
an ungodly amount of films.
Right. It sounds like Bollywood, man. They average like hundreds of movies a year. Even now, they make movies all day long.
Chaplin.
Oh, Chaplin.
Robert Downey Jr. He played as Chaplin in the remake. I haven't seen it. It's on my Hulu list.
Yeah. One of my students was like, did you know Robert Downey Jr. played? Because we did a Charlie Chaplin section and we watched a Charlie Chaplin movie, which if you haven't seen it, it's called The Kid. It's about an hour long. It's silent, but it's really good.
City Lights.
It's really good. So if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Looks like Tarzan came out then. My mom freaking loved Tarzan, man. Tarzan the Ape Man. I should watch that. I really want to go back. I should watch a lot of these movies. What I need to do is find a list, top 10 movies from each of these decades and try to watch them as much as I can. It's kind of hard to sit down and watch movies, though, for me, because I don't know if I told you guys, but I'm a teacher.
Well, that's what, harkening back to our last conversations about streaming versus films, I find it a lot easier to stream TV shows over movies because I usually can block out 20 minutes. I have a hard time with 90.
Well, it's funny that you say that because people can sit down and binge TV shows, but they won't sit down and watch a movie.
Why is that?
And I'm the same way. I think it's because TV shows 30 minutes an hour, and then you're on to the next episode. I don't know. There's something there where people are okay with that, but for some reason, when they watch a movie, it's just a different ball game. It's like I can't sit down and watch a movie, but I can sit down and binge a TV show for 8 hours.
I don't want to get too far off track from the 1930s, but if I had to take a guess, I feel like TV shows have more packed into them for the amount of time that you watch them.
It's like reading a book.
So if you watch 3 episodes of a TV show versus one film, you get more content from those episodes than you would a film. But we're getting off track. Let's go back. Go back in history to 1930.
So it looks like Scarface. There's a version of Scarface from the 1930s. I'm going to be honest with you. I've never seen either Scarface movie. Sorry if we lost 30% of our viewership there.
Just taking them off.
Just keep killing them off, man. There's a movie here called Little Caesar, and it makes me want pizza. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Okay.
It's from 1931.
That's a classic monster movie.
I would watch that.
How about A Christmas Carol?
Is there
or Scrooge?
From the 30s?
Yes.
Oh, cool. I like a Muppet Christmas Carol.
All the Zorro films.
Let me just tell you, I'm a sucker for the Muppets. I know we're not talking about the Muppets, but I'm a sucker for the Muppets. We should do a Muppets episode. Oh my God. Can we do a Muppets episode, guys?
Absolutely.
Oh my God. You're like, sure, whatever, dude. I don't have anything to say about the fucking Muppets. Whatever. This is your podcast. You know what, Jake? Zach calls me the father of this podcast.
I heard that.
How come you don't call me? Yeah, how come you don't call me the father of the podcast?
Well, my memory.
He doesn't view you as daddy, I guess.
Coming to me and asking to start one with you. So
he doesn't view you as daddy. You need to view me as daddy, Jake.
I remember you coming to me.
Yeah, but you know what though? When we were talking about it, I was like, oh my God, we have to get Zack in on this.
Yeah.
Like there's no way. Like let me just, I know we're supposed to be talking about 30s, but let me just tell you something about Zack. And Zack, I super appreciate this about you is
we're big fans.
That's not what I was going to say. Whenever I started at Channel 7, Zack was the first person to try and get to know me as a person, not romantically. You know, it was 2018, I think, when I started.
A long time ago.
Yeah. But, you know, we went out to that dinner and they were kind of talking to me, but freaking Jocelyn kept calling me Chris. And I was like, my name is not Chris. And
I remember that. Who else was on that?
Me, you, Jocelyn, Shelby, and I think Abby. And I think
yes. I remember that night now once you mentioned it.
Yeah. And so, well, no, we went to the Italian place.
Next door.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And so Zack was the only one who got to know me. And because of that, Zack and I became friends and we connected over movies. And so when I came to you, Jake, about the podcast, I was like, because Jake and I have been trying to find a project to do together.
Yeah, we've been looking to make stuff together.
And so I was like, oh my God, I got to do a podcast and I can do it with Jake. And then we were talking and I was like, dude, we have to get Zack involved. Like that was the conversation we had.
Yeah. And then I was hesitant at first, but then I said, yeah.
And I was like, no, dude, you need, because if you remember, I was like, no, you need to get on this Zoom right now. And so I'm glad you did. Sorry, we got off a little off track, but that's kind of how the podcast started. For those of you who
BTS behind the scenes,
the origin. I love the cover art of a lot of these.
Me too.
Looking at the films. I mean, I don't know if this is accurate to what people saw in promotions back in the day, but just very colorful. I would like these as like movie posters hanging up on my wall. It's a lot more interesting than a lot of the posters you see these days are all the generic, same old Star Wars-esque, just
headshots.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like, it's just a bunch of headshots, like a bunch of, Avengers Endgame, just a bunch of, you kind of had to do that to get them all in the poster, but it's like.
That should be an episode.
Poster art?
Talk about posters.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be cool. But yeah, I do like some of these. Like, I would love to have some of these on my wall.
I wonder if they were color when they were like promoting.
I'm sure they were.
The movies. Yeah.
Here's the thing about the 1930s and earlier films before it was really industrialized, which again, I know that's ironic because 1930s was really the start of the industrialization of films. As far as like the posters and artwork go, they were still considered art pieces as opposed to advertisement for the film. They weren't used solely as a advertisement,
the marketing
as an advertisement piece. They were actually used as pieces of artwork themselves. The artistry was put into that work outside of its relation to the film. So
I can see that.
Yeah, I was going to say you can totally see that, and it's kind of the same with video game cases or boxes. Because when video games came out originally, they were in boxes, cardboard boxes, and if you look at the artwork, it's kind of reminiscent of that, where you have these great art pieces, on the box, but they're more realistic on the box. But then you hook up your Atari and it's just super blocky guy,
3 pixels.
It's nothing like what the box, but the boxes look cool. One other movie I wanted to point out from the 30s that I just saw was A Star Is Born. If you remember, a few years ago, Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper did a version of this movie as well. So there's been several versions of this movie come out?
Little Women.
Oh,
also.
Did that come out in the 30s? Man, Oh, hey, look, here's Of Mice and Men. Have you ever seen, have y'all read the book of Mice and Men?
No, I don't think so.
Oh my God, guys.
I'd have been assigned to read it back in the day, but man, I'll probably skim through it.
We read it in English class, but it's such a good book. And the movie, here's a 1939 version of the movie, but there's also another movie with Gary Sinise. Y'all know who Gary Sinise is?
Oh.
Lieutenant Dan. But anyway, there's
Lieutenant Dan. Is that from SpongeBob?
You.
That's Dirty Dan.
Dirty Dan. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's Dirty Dan. Lieutenant Dan is from Forrest Gump, and
I haven't seen that movie. I have it on DVD though.
I wasn't allowed to watch Forrest Gump.
Zack.
Really?
Zachariah.
My dad hates it.
Zachariah. Dude, that movie is so
I like 90s movies, so
that movie is so good. Zach, you listen.
I need to say Green Mile too.
I do too, but you need to watch Forrest Gump. Seriously, dude. Watch. If I have to drive to freaking San Antonio and watch it with you, I will. No, I won't do that. But seriously, Forrest Gump, one of the greatest movies of all time. Okay.
So is Joker.
Okay. All right.
Oh my God. We're getting so off track.
But there's a 39 version of Mice and Men. That's why I was talking about it. That was a really good movie. Like the movie and the book. I mean, they did a good job. Well, at least with the newer version of this movie, they did a really good job. I think we're good on the 1930s, right? You guys have anything else you want to say about the 1930s?
Don't watch Gone with the Wind.
Oh my God. Watch it at least once.
Watch it once.
Every movie.
How terrible it is.
Every movie is worth watching once.
I always thought tell you how not to make a self-important movie.
I'm a big World War II guy, and I like how World War II influenced
a lot of movies,
and like including within certain scenes of movies. Oh, buy war bonds. Like they're kind of doing little promotions for Americans to support the cause. So, well, to be honest, I don't think the war bond stuff would happen until after we got involved, which was 41. I believe.
Yeah, what's the point? Unless we were involved.
Yeah, but firstly, we were isolationist country. Then we got attacked, and then we started doing the marketing and film of support the war. But earlier on, like more obviously, like All Quiet on the Western Front. That's World War I, but it had to do with like war.
The war bonds thing was more of a promotion before the movie. It's like go buy war bonds, support your troops. Like if you can't be in the army or if you can't be in the war, if you can't fight, then you can do this, at the beginning of the movie. And then they'll show the movie. That was kind of the trailers of the day, as well as, the singing concession stand items.
Yeah. I'm also like on another kind of a race, or just having other people play other nationalities. I think they use generally, Caucasians for like Asian actors.
I mean, they use Caucasians for everything.
Oh yeah.
Who was one of the first person of color to have like a prominent role, whether it was the 30s, 40s? I'm trying to think.
That's his name, Bojangles, man.
Bojangles.
I don't think he was the first, but he was a prominent African American actor, singer, dancer from back then. That he had a lot of bigger roles, kind of one of the bigger prominent African American actors. Yeah, so we can talk about that later. All right, well, cool, man. Well, I guess that'll wrap up this week's episode of the Fantastic Mr. Podcast. That was a good. I think that was a good conversation.
It was a good conversation.
I'll be interested to see how many people
are interested.
Also love or have any interest in the 30s.
If you do have any episode ideas for us, or if you just want to say hello, or you want to say you suck, you can hit us up on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the Fantastic Mr. Podcast. Please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to us. And I guess, guys, you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yo.
Hey guys.
I love how you're like hi instead of bye. All right, well this was a good episode, guys, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.